insurance fraud that are being perpetrated using artificial intelligence. In the UK, it's up 400%. Using the power of artificial intelligence, create up to 20,000 fake identities in a single day. The deepfake detectors are falling short of the deepfake generators. And it's just a matter of economics.
Fraud detection technology is 5 years behind fraud creation technology.
The total losses to fraud are 1.3 trillion, and most of that has almost zero cost basis. People in these scam compounds were slaves.
What does that mean? When you say a lot of these people were slaves on the compound, there is return on investment when you lose $25 million.
The old-fashioned methods. Only a small fraction is using artificial intelligence.
I don't know how to protect myself and my business or the organization that I'm working with.
This could all be an AI-generated conversation between me and you. It can be your AI agent talking to my AI agent in my voice using ChatGPT's API and our voice clones to communicate with each other.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Algorithm. I'm your host, Arti Samani. I work with executives to incorporate AI into their business strategy and run awareness workshops on AI risks and cybersecurity. I also talk about it a lot at conferences, at corporate events, and here on this show. Today we are venturing into the critical topic of cybercrime. It is rising at an alarming rate, and every day we hear news stories of sophisticated scams, data breaches, and new fraud tactics. But what is driving this surge and how can we protect ourselves? The topic is vast and complex. There are many factors leading to the proliferation of cyber fraud. AI is the biggest contributor, but along with technology, social engineering plays a major role. Did you know in Q1 of 2024, 90% of successful attacks involved human manipulation? Cybercrime as a service is a growing industry, and there is a whole shadow economy around it, a very lucrative one at that. Small businesses are caught in the tight clutches of ransomware attacks, and security technology is just not able to keep up pace of fraud innovation. The environment is like nothing we have seen before. In these situations, it is important that we bring as much information and awareness as possible. And that's why I have a very special guest on the show today. His name is Frank McKenna, a lifelong fraud fighter. Frank started his career in 1990 as a fraud analyst and investigator and has been working with financial service businesses the world over. At present, Frank is the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Point Predictive, an organization that focuses on solving application fraud for the lending industry. Frank on Fraud is a personal blog that he writes and one that I read diligently. Frank, welcome to Beyond the Algorithm. I am so delighted to have you as my guest today.
I'm super happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Can you tell us some more examples?
On a Sunday morning, he got a Zoom call request from the CFO, and he hopped on the Zoom call. And lo and behold, there's the CFO, and other people from the company started to join the Zoom call. So this isn't something that all of us would do every day, right? You join a Zoom call, and here's a bunch of people from the company. There's the CFO. And then the CFO starts to order him to do things in quick succession. He's saying, I want you to write this down. You need to do this right away. Send a wire transfer to this for this amount. Send a wire transfer to this bank account for this amount. And he got the accounts payable clerk in a rush to send these things out. And he did it through Zoom. The accounts payable director, being a good employee, actually carried it out. And it wasn't until about 3 days later that he realized that the whole Zoom call that he had taken was actually a deepfake. That wasn't the CFO. Those weren't the employees. Even though they looked like people that he'd worked with, it wasn't them. And that company lost $25 million. That's an attack prime example of the types of attack that we're going to see with artificial intelligence.
So this case has been publicized a lot and it's being investigated by the police at the moment. What are some of the other examples that perhaps fly under the radar and people aren't aware because they aren't so well publicized?
Yeah, some of the other ones that I think that you're maybe not hearing about too much, but insurance fraud. So if you think about insurance fraud, this is more a warning for insurance companies that fraudsters are now using artificial intelligence to boost their insurance claims. So how do you do that? You do that with Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is a great tool for photographers, but it's also a really powerful tool for fraudsters, especially now, because they've introduced what they call generative AI fill. So how does this occur? How does a fraudster use AI to get money from an insurance company? Well, what they can do is take a picture of their car. Just take a picture of their car. They upload it in Adobe Photoshop. They can highlight the bumper and they can instruct the generative AI through a prompt to damage the bumper. And they can create a big dent in the bumper. They can submit that as an insurance claim working with a body shop or a repair company that's collusive with them. And they can get a check to repair this damage, but it's all fake. They can get a check from the insurance company for the balance of the damage. That's one example. They could total their car with generative AI. You can take a picture of your car, upload it to Adobe Photoshop, and then total your car, all with artificial intelligence, and get a check for the total amount of your car. There's many examples of insurance fraud that are being perpetrated using artificial intelligence. In the UK, it's up 400%. It's a big type of fraud there. A lot of people are committing this type of fraud with their insurance companies. And at the end, the people that are paying for it are the good consumers, right? The good consumers have to cover those costs of the people committing fraud. So that's an example of AI that's in a damaging way that it's being used. There's other ways that artificial intelligence is being used through fake documentation. So you may not know this, but there are websites out there. Generator 3.0 is one of them. It's onlyfake.org. And criminals do this. They can go on there and using the power of artificial intelligence, create up to 20,000 fake identities in a single day. So imagine they could create the identity of every single person in a city within a single day using the power of AI. And when I talk about what are they creating with these document generators, they're creating social security cards that look like they're real, driver's licenses that look like they're real, pay stubs and bank statements, all the documentation around how to look real. There's other examples, and I can go into them, but those are just some of the ways that we're seeing AI kind of proliferate the fraud landscape.
So, if I'm an insurance company, how do I know whether this is genuine or real? So, typically, the process is the customer files their claim, you request photographic evidence of a damaged car, they send the pictures, you contact the body shop, they get you a quote, and if it's genuine, you pay out. It's not feasible to send out humans to examine the car physically. It's just too expensive. So how do you know if this is a fraudulent claim or a real claim?
So one of the things you can do is use like deepfake detectors to see if an image has been altered. So there are technologies that insurance companies can use that they can run it through to see if there's any altering of the images. That's one thing that they can do. The second thing that they can do is through verification calls, communicating with the claimant and communicating with the body shop and verifying those independently what they're saying to see if it's real. So it may not be feasible to do a site inspection of the vehicle or a site inspection if there's like a property claim. But it is feasible to do like a verification call that you can employ tactics to listen for discrepancies of what they're claiming, where the accident occurred, how it occurred, where is the damage, some of those things. So they can do those verification calls. There is services, in here in the United States, it's like Uber and others that'll do errands and things like that. You could even deploy some of those types of services to swing by the body shop and independently take a picture of the car and submit it to the insurance company. There are many different ways, but mostly it's just applying some common sense to the claim. Typically, when you have these claims, everything isn't going to add up. There's going to be some red flags.
So most of what you described there, it's actually human validation or validation with humans. So listening out for discrepancies or cross-examining and making sure the testaments match, etc., except for deepfake detectors or synthetic image generated detectors, etc. So it seems to me like security solutions are falling short. And a stat that I read somewhere is that the fraud detection technology is 5 years behind fraud creation technology. 5 years is a long time in tech, right? Given the pace at which AI is moving. So is that really true? Is technology really falling behind when it comes to security? And therefore, we just have to now strengthen the army of humans to really look out for these kind of really look out and detect fraud humanly versus relying on technology?
Yeah, so that's a really great stat that you pointed out, Artie. I think the fact is that it's true. The deepfake detectors are falling short of the deepfake generators. And it's just a matter of economics. Just look at why that is. Number one, the generators have the advantage because of money. There are billions and billions of dollars that are being invested by Amazon, by Facebook, by Google, by Anthropic, by all these companies, OpenAI. They're all throwing billions of dollars into the generative AI tools because there's a lot of investment money and there's a lot of productivity and efficiency money that's going to come as a result of that. The deepfake detectors are kind of an afterthought, and there are some companies that are investing in the space, but not nearly to the level of the OpenAI. Pindrop is an example. They took a $100 million investment to target voice cloning. Pindrop is used across companies here in the United States for phone calls. For most companies, it'll listen in and it'll detect if it's a deep fake voice clone. So there is money going into it. It's just not to the level of the deep fake generators. So to your point, we're going to have to rely on human intuition, human expertise to be able to identify these types of deep fakes, these uses of artificial intelligence. And I think as humans, we're very equipped to be able to spot deepfakes if we know what to look for and if we keep the right context in mind. So you always have to be alert and aware that everything could be a deepfake. So the combination of being hyper alert and then knowing what to look for is a good stopgap until we can get the deepfake detectors to the level they need to be.
That's interesting. Like deepfakes are so realistic now. I struggle to sometimes tell the difference, and I'm looking at these things on a daily basis. The context it's a great point you make about being aware of the context, being hyper aware of what you're clicking on before you click on something. What is the request being made of you? Does it fit into the larger context of the organization, the business that I'm working with, etc.? But actually looking out for anomalies in an image or even on a live video call, I find it very difficult to spot these with human eye, and I expect that it'll only get harder and harder, right? So what advice do you have there? What should we be looking for in addition to being context aware and intuition aware? Visually, what should we be looking for?
There are things you could look for. So I agree. I think some of these deepfakes are so good that they're hard to detect. But if you look for the subtleties in a deepfake video, in a deepfake image, and even in a voice clone, you'll be able to kind of spot some of these things. Keeping in mind the context is really important. Number one, if you're suspicious of a video that you're watching, the first thing that you can do is really look at the lips and the way that the lips are moving versus the sound. Most deepfakes, as good as they are, the lip syncing with the audio is going to be just a little bit off. So paying attention really to the lips and nothing else will help you identify a deepfake. For an image too, if you're looking at an image and you think it's a deepfake, there's a couple things you can do. Number one is look at the eyes. The eyes are the number one way to spot a deepfake. Pupils are round. So if you look at the pupils on a real image, the pupils will be round. But if you look at it on a deepfake image, the shape will be distorted. It'll be triangular. It'll be oblong. It won't look like an iris. So the pupil will be an odd shape. And that's a dead giveaway in 99% of deepfake images. Look for that pupil if it's not round. The other thing you can look for is the way the light hits the eye. When you have a deepfake image, there's not going to be a reflection in the eyeball that looks normal. It'll be all over the place like a galaxy, right? I think there was a big article recently that talked about how to spot. So you can look at the eyeballs. The other thing you can do is look at the fingers. Imagery has a real problem with fingers. So it won't have fingernails. They'll have extra fingers. There'll be some of the things that are distorting around the fingers as well, because these deepfakes are not really good at getting the details. And in the voice clones, the thing to listen for is uniformity of the sentence. Typically, voice clones, the voice clone recording is very perfect. So the space between words is uniform. It doesn't have perplexity like the human voice will, meaning that there's unexpected pauses and things like that. So those are the types of things that you should look for. And as always, there's Google reverse image search and things like that you can always use and see if the reverse image searches to something else. So those are some things that the common person can do to spot a deepfake and not become a victim of it.
It sounds like we all need degree in forensic investigation now as well, because you have to look so minutely with so much precision, and it's only going to require more and more precision as we go along. Let's come back to the fraud economics. You touched on that earlier. So I don't understand the unit economics of fraud. Seemingly, there's a lot of money being poured into it, presumably because there's a lot of output and a lot of return on investment. So just help us understand some of the numbers, help us understand, contextualize, and quantify some of the economics behind it, which will help our audience understand why there is so much incentive, why this business is so lucrative.
Yeah, if you think about the economics of it, there's really not much cost to commit fraud in today's world, especially with artificial intelligence and bots. You basically, a single person using artificial intelligence from their home, so there's no cost of any property except for your rent, using a service online, you can launch a bot attack, you can launch malware, you can launch social engineering attacks right from your bedroom. And you can generate, I'll give you an example. Here in the United States during the pandemic, there were 16-year-old kids working from their bedroom that were making an annualized salary of $3.1 million. So they're making $16,000 a week doing refunding fraud, where they were basically having merchandise shipped to people and then claiming they never got the merchandise. They were making $3.1 million a year in salary, committing fraud right from their bedroom with no cost of goods. That's just one example. But there was, in the United States, if we think about the money that's lost, I think on an annualized basis, the total losses to fraud are 1.3 trillion. And most of that has almost zero cost basis. That's why it's so lucrative for these criminal rings to be able to jump on the bandwagon and use this as a way to make money. In Southeast Asia, I think it's something like what they've accounted for in cryptocurrency just in a single year was 94 billion. And most of the people that were committing fraud for them, these people in these scam compounds, were slaves. And they only had to pay for their food and their lodging. And they did not pay them salaries. So
What does that mean? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's interesting. So when you say a lot of these people were slaves on the compound and they were only paid for food, what is the job of these people when they're on the compound of attackers?
what happens with these scam compounds? They're typically large buildings that'll house 2,000 to 3,000 people. To get employees, they have advertisements on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Telegram, looking for people who want to work as customer service representatives or work as models or work as, cryptocurrency advisors. So they have these nice sounding jobs on social media, and you can live anywhere in the world. They will pay for your plane ticket to come to countries like Thailand or Cambodia. When you arrive on the plane, they'll pick you up in a bus, or sometimes you have to walk many miles. And it's there that the people that have taken these jobs realize that they're not getting what they bargained for. They might have been promised a nice high-paying job in their own countries, but when they get there, they're trudging through the jungle to these compounds, and then they're quickly put to work with a set of instructions, and those instructions are basically how to send text to people, how to sign up for LinkedIn and Facebook, start to add people that they're going to victimize, and start to interact with them on a daily basis. So instead of being a customer service representative, you end up working for these scam compounds with thousands of other people scamming people. And if you don't hit your quota every day, they'll actually torture you and beat you as a way to incent you to scam more people and to be more successful. And they end up never paying these people a salary. In fact, they almost work as indentured servants to try to pay off the price of the plane tickets. So they are essentially slaves, and they're scam slaves working in these centers. That's what it means.
Thank you. I had no idea this was a real thing. This is the first time I'm learning this. So thank you for making us aware of what is going on out there.
There's over 300,000 human slaves right now in the world that are in these scam compounds throughout Cambodia, throughout Dubai, through different countries in Latin America and Southeast Asia that are scam slaves working in these compounds. 300,000 people. So it's a very significant problem.
And this is the fraud economics, right? So my apologies for interrupting you, but you were talking about the money. So it's not costing them a lot. They have almost free labor. The tools are very cheap, very inexpensive. They don't have real estate cost, etc. And then
they're successful. And I think the fact is that there's very little worry that they need to have that they're going to get caught. 99.9% of people that commit fraud are never caught. And if they are caught, most of them will not serve any jail time. And if they do serve jail time, it'll be minimal. So there's essentially, low cost, low barriers to entry, and almost no ramifications if you ever get caught. So this combination of no cost or low cost, high returns, and then no ramifications is why we have so much fraud in the world right now.
Wow. But the case that you described earlier about the finance professional in Hong Kong, the deepfake CFO, that must require some level of technical knowledge, technical expertise. They clearly understand human psychology very well, which is why even though they are AI powered, the phishing attacks, the social engineering attacks work very, very well. So I can understand that some of the fraud is inexpensive, but the organized gangs must require money. They must hire engineers. They must hire technical people to break into some of these defenses, etc. So how much are these things selling for? What is the ROI? What are they hiring? Where are they hiring, etc.? Just how does that economy actually work in practice?
Yeah, so it's going to vary geographically. So we'll talk about Southeast Asia, the pig butchering operations. We'll talk about how they operate. So there are, I'd say, an army of different big bosses, right? These are people that have been scamming, that are kind of the owners of the compound. And they will invest, right? They'll invest in a building, so they'll lease a building. They will hire software engineers to be able to build these fake cryptocurrency apps, to be able to build different websites that they use for recruiting purposes. So they might put up seemingly legitimate company. It's like a crypto company and it looks real, and they have that website so that they can recruit these slaves in the compound, so it looks like it's a legitimate company. And then they'll hire these software engineers to create AI programs and tools. So deepfake software, the ability to take any face, that they take a picture of a model, deepfake it so that anybody in that scam compound can use that face and call a victim. So the software engineers will do all of the technical work, and they'll pay a pretty good amount for those software engineers for local currency. I don't know what they're paying. It's all on Telegram, but it's a respectable salary for these software engineers. The second group they'll hire are models, and models are basically the catfish. These are good-looking, beautiful men and women that will be used as the face of the scam, the catfish, right? And they will take pictures of these people, these models, eating, traveling, shopping for luxury items, in the hospital, all sorts of life situations with these models that are then used as props in the cyber crime. And then the third tranche of people are the workers. These are the managers and the call center employees who are sending text messages, using WhatsApp, doing voice calls, and doing the videos using the deepfake AI, interacting with the victims. And those are the lowest levels. And they are the ones that are interacting with the victims. So they have it's a company that involves all of the same things a normal company would have. But they're able to scale it up because most of that labor, 80% of it's free or very low cost.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The deep underworld of fraud finance. So let's switch it up a little bit and go to AI agents. So when ChatGPT 4 was released, it was very buzzy, right? It can suddenly see us, hear us, respond emotionally, understand our emotion, etc., etc. But in my head, the first thought was, wow, this is a playground for attackers, yet another toy they can use to make matters worse for people. What is your view on this? Are AI agents like the prime thing that they use? Should we be using these AI agents? Should we be using GPT 4.0 and allowing it to take our screenshots and us talking back at them, etc., etc.? Just tell us your views on AI agents playing their part in cybercrime, and what does that look like in the future for us?
Yeah, my personal opinion on artificial intelligence in all forms and even AI agents is that it has enormous powers to make us better at our jobs and make us more efficient and more productive. And whether we want it or think it should be out there or not, it already is. So it's kind of a foregone conclusion. So the role that they play in fraud and scams is going to be a large one, right? Because now, yes, these AI agents, are operating kind of with the voices that are assigned to them by ChatGPT. These are the fake voices, but there's no reason that you can't, right? Or you can't create a voice clone of yourself, and using an API, you can hit the ChatGPT API to be able to take in whatever the end user is requesting of you, transform it text to voice, and then you can use through your own API, use your voice clone to respond. So, for example, someday this could all be an AI generated conversation between me and you. It can be your AI agent talking to my AI agent in my voice, using ChatGPT's API and our voice clones to communicate with each other. So that likely will occur. In fact, with some programming, you could do that today and have it up and running. You have to be a little bit technical. But yes, I think that's going to open up a world of scams and fraud that we're going to be prepared for as these agents. For example, a good one will be you're talking to, a friend or a family who's asking for money. It'll be in their voice. They'll respond as you would expect them to respond, but it's not them at all. It's a voice clone with the chat GPT agent in the background helping to answer the questions.
How should we take care not to fall into this trap when we are using ChatGPT and other agents?
Well, I think the thing that we have to do is, again, remember the context. How many times does somebody call you or text you asking for money that you know? It's probably very, very rare, right? It might happen once a month or once a year. But so right then and there, you really need to look at the context of every conversation. And if somebody is asking for money, regardless, you need to be on high alert and use maybe out of band, which is calling them back. Because right then and there, 99.9% of your conversations won't be impacted. It'll be that 1% or that 10 basis points or less than 1/10 of 1% of conversations you have where you need to be hyper vigilant. But I think that's the number one thing, is keep in mind the context and then use traditional ways of, video calling them yourself. Go back to them and things like that. So you're not being fooled by artificial intelligence.
So again, it all goes down to human vigilance, basically, right? So my next question was going to be the $1,000,000 question. What should we do about this? Like, there's a lot of scary stuff that we talked about today. Some of our listeners will be wondering, oh my goodness, the world is very gloomy out there. I don't know how to protect myself and my business or the organization that I'm working with. So do you have any guidance, any advice beyond what we have already discussed in the form of context and human intuition? Are there frameworks, processes, policies that business leaders should be putting in place within their organizations or individuals should be taken care of?
I'll just start off by saying I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence personally. I just love what it can help us do and how it can make us more productive individually. I don't think that AI is going to kill all the jobs in the world. And I don't have a gloomy outlook on artificial intelligence. I think it's going to be used for the vast majority of cases to make us more efficient and more productive. But in saying that, we need to be aware of all the pitfalls. And as fraud professionals, we need to be aware of what we can do. So I'd say the number one thing, maybe we didn't talk about this already, but I would highly recommend that every company get some training on the pitfalls of artificial intelligence, how to spot it, how to be aware of it, and what to do about it. So training, I think, is step one. So I think that's important that companies consider that. If we think about everything we've talked about already, 99.9% of fraud is still the old-fashioned methods. Only a small fraction is using artificial intelligence. So we're still in the very, very early days, which means that we need to work more on the training and awareness side of it, and then work on the detection technologies and things like that over time. But the thing we can do right now, today, is training and awareness. And I think that's what you do very well. I know I love to do it as well, make sure people know.
That's sage advice, very, very important, to carve out budget. And a lot of businesses have not carved out budgets for training and awareness program because they've never had to do it to the extent that which they have to today.
Well, you think about the $25 million BEC case we talked about. If you can avoid even a fraction of that through a BEC attack, a ransomware attack, it's well worth it. The cost of the training is well worth it. If you don't have budget carved out for training in this area, I highly recommend it, because this is something that we need to make sure everybody's aware of, because when it hits, it's going to be too late.
Yeah, it hits hard. And that's a great point, because a lot of times I hear people say, well, how do we quantify the return on investment on training? And my response is that there is return on investment. When you lose $25 million, you will know how to quantify it and what your return is.
I often find companies will ask me that same question. And my answer is always, there's always going to be an ROI for fraud prevention. You can wait and you can take the losses to prove out the ROI, or you can spend the money to avoid the losses. There's always an ROI if you wait long enough. Do you really want to wait long enough and take the loss? Or do you want to be preventative, spend a little bit up front to avoid it? And in almost all cases, companies elect to be preventative. If they don't, they've learned a hard lesson.
Yeah, and they will be very hard lessons in times to come. So Frank, one question I ask all my guests before we sign off is, what conversations or what is the question that executives and boards should be asking but are not?
That's a really good question. I think one of the questions, if I was an executive, would be, what are our real vulnerabilities? Nobody's going to get in trouble, but I really want to know where we're exposed. Asking very specific questions about phishing and malware and access to systems. Are one-time passcodes absolutely required every single system's access? Are we using whitelisting on all of our IP addresses for sensitive systems? Do we have training for AI attacks, for malware, for phishing, for social engineering? Ask very specific questions about vulnerabilities and make sure that nobody feels afraid to answer you. Because I think that's the only way that a company is going to be able to take preventative action, is to really understand where the risk is so that they can spend the money and the time to stop it.
Yeah, great point. And this should be part of every executive meeting and every board meeting, I feel, because the landscape is changing so quickly that if you blink, you've almost missed what's going on. So it's important that the risk register is kept up to date, reviewed, and acted upon on a very regular basis.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. In fact, a lot of boardrooms now have the title Chief Fraud Officer is a new title that is joining the boardrooms, because a lot of executives realize fraud, cybersecurity needs to become part of the boardroom, needs to be part of the conversation, because a single ransomware attack, a single AI attack, a single pig butchering attack has the power to bring that company down permanently. So it has to be part of the conversation.
Very interesting. And what does the profile of that individual look like?
The profile of its chief fraud officer is somebody that has experience, typically, 10 plus years experience working in a bank, working for a software vendor, working for a platform, that knows all of the dynamics of fraud. So it's a very experienced person, and they are well versed in how to communicate in a quantitative way to executives about the damage of fraud and the economics. And their whole job is to ensure the protection of the company against fraud and cyber scams, and to bring it to the board's attention. So they are the highest level, keeping the business running and free from fraud. That would be the general profile of that type of person.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I hadn't come across that role, but it makes total sense. Frank McKenna, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you today. I have learned so much. I know I learned a lot during the prep session, but today has opened up a whole different dimension in my own thinking and in my own view of the world and perspectives. Thank you so much for your time. I very much appreciate it. And this will be a very powerful episode, or powerful 2 episodes for our audiences.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing. I follow you on LinkedIn, and I love your post, and I've even used some of those in my own training. I really appreciate your passion for educating people through this podcast, through your posts, through your training about AI and the future danger and why we need to be prepared. I think it's a really valuable to have your voice out there raising the alarm so that we can get ahead of it. So I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to conversations into the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Frank.